I was sitting in my mother-in-law's living room on Thanksgiving, watching my husband's family laugh and talk over each other, like they always did. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air, and everything seemed perfect. Normal? Until my sister-in-law Jessica looked right at me, smiled and said in front of everyone, "You know, Natalie, if you disappeared tomorrow, I do not think anybody here would even notice." The room went silent for exactly 1 second. Then they laughed. Like it was funny. Like it was just another harmless joke. I smiled too, because that is what I always did. But something inside me cracked wide open, and right there, surrounded by people who were supposed to be my family, I made a decision. What if I actually did disappear? Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button. Subscribe, because this story is about to show you what happens when the invisible person finally walks away. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. My name is Natalie. I am 28 years old, and I had been married to David for 5 years when this happened. We lived in a small town in Kansas, about 15 minutes away from his mother's house. That might not sound close, but in his family it meant we were practically neighbors. David worked as an accountant at a local firm, regular 9 to 5. I worked from home as a graphic designer, which meant I had what they called a flexible schedule. And in their minds, flexible meant available. Always available. David's family was tight-knit. His mom, Martha, was 58, the kind of woman who believed family dinners were sacred. His older brother, Brandon, was 35, married to Jessica, and they had a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. We all lived within a 20-minute radius of each other. Sunday dinners at Martha's house were mandatory. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesday nights, when someone felt like getting together, we were expected to show up. And I did. Every single time. Here is what nobody tells you about being the quiet one in a loud family. You become invisible in plain sight. I was always there, always present, but I might as well have been a piece of furniture. I was the one who remembered everyone's birthdays and bought the gifts. When Martha turned 57 last year, I spent 3 hours picking out the perfect cashmere scarf and writing a heartfelt card. She opened it, said thank you, and moved on to the next gift. When Emma had her school play, I was the one who bought flowers and made a personalized photo album afterwards. Jessica barely glanced at it. I brought food to every family dinner. Homemade dishes that took hours to prepare. Nobody ever asked for the recipes. Nobody ever said more than a polite thanks. And when I tried to join conversations to share something about my work or my life, I would get maybe 3 words out before someone interrupted or changed the subject entirely. David would just shrug it off later. "They are just excited, babe. They do not mean anything by it. Do not be so sensitive." But it was not just being talked over. It was Jessica's little comments that felt like paper cuts. Every single time we got together, she would find something to say. "Oh, Natalie, that is such a safe choice when I wore a simple navy dress to a wedding. Must be nice working from home, basically a vacation every day. Like my job was not real work. You are so lucky you do not have kids yet. You get to sleep in as if not having children made me less of an adult." And every time she would laugh after saying it, so if I reacted I would be the sensitive one. The one who could not take a joke. David never defended me. Not once in 5 years. When I brought it up, he would say I was overreacting. That is just how Jessica is. She is sarcastic with everyone. You are taking it too personally. But it did not feel like sarcasm. It felt like she was chipping away at me piece by piece, and nobody else noticed or cared. That Thanksgiving was supposed to be like any other. We showed up at Martha's house around 3 in the afternoon. The kitchen was warm and chaotic. Martha was pulling the turkey out of the oven, barking orders at Brandon to set the table. Jessica was showing everyone photos from their upcoming Hawaii trip on her phone. Look at this resort. It has 3 pools. Emma is going to love it. Everyone gathered around her, oohing and eyeing. I stood at the edge of the group smiling, waiting for a break in the conversation. When there was finally a pause, I mentioned that I had just landed a new client, a tech startup that wanted me to design their entire brand identity. It was the biggest project of my career, something I was genuinely excited about. I got maybe 4 words out before Jessica cut me off. Oh, that reminds me. Did I tell you guys Brandon got promoted? And just like that, the conversation shifted. Nobody looked back at me. It was like I had not spoken at all. We sat down to eat. The table was crowded, loud, full of laughter and overlapping conversations. I was at the far end next to David, picking at my mashed potatoes and trying to stay engaged. Martha was telling stories about Brandon when he was little, how he used to hide vegetables under the table and blame the dog. Everyone was laughing. I smiled along, but I felt like I was watching from behind glass. Present, but not really there. Then Jessica turned to me. She had this look on her face, like she had just thought of something hilarious. You know, Natalie, if you disappeared tomorrow, I do not think anybody here would even notice. You are just so quiet. She said it with a smile, like it was a compliment, like being invisible was something to be proud of. The table went silent, just for a moment. I saw Martha's face tighten, but she did not say anything. Brandon looked uncomfortable. David laughed nervously and put his hand on my shoulder. She is kidding, babe. Jessica is terrible, Martha said lightly, but she was already laughing too. And just like that, everyone moved on. The conversation picked back up. The moment passed. Except for me, it did not pass. It lodged itself in my chest like a stone. I smiled. I nodded. I finished my dinner. I helped clear the plates and load the dishwasher, while everyone else moved to the living room for dessert. And the whole time, I kept hearing those words in my head. If you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would even notice. The worst part was not that she said it. The worst part was that I knew it was true. We drove home in silence. David asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. We got ready for bed. He fell asleep within minutes, but I lay there staring at the ceiling. I thought about the last 5 years, all the birthdays I remembered when nobody remembered mine, all the times I rearranged my schedule to make theirs work, all the conversations I was cut out of the comments. I swallowed the moments I made myself smaller so they could feel bigger. And for what? So Jessica could confirm what I already knew, that I was invisible. That is when the idea hit me. What if I just stopped? What if I pulled back completely and saw how long it took for anyone to notice? Not out of spite. Not to punish anyone. Just to see. To test whether Jessica was right. Whether I really was as invisible as I felt. And if I was, then maybe it was time to stop trying so hard to be seen by people who refused to look. The next morning I woke up with a clarity I had not felt in years. I was not angry. I was not hurt anymore. I was just done. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened my phone. The family group chat was already active. Jessica had sent photos from Thanksgiving. "Look at this crew," the message said with a string of heart emojis. I looked at the photo. I was in it, standing at the edge of the frame, half cut off. Of course. I did not respond. Normally I would have sent back a smiley face or a thank you for hosting message. But this time, I just closed the app. That was step 1. Stop participating in the group chat. I wanted to see how long it would take for someone to reach out directly, to ask where I was, to notice I had gone quiet. Step 2 was easier. I stopped sending gifts. No more birthday reminders on my calendar. No more spending hours picking out the perfect present, writing thoughtful cards, making sure everyone felt special. If they wanted to celebrate, they could figure it out themselves. Step 3 was the hardest but also the most necessary. I started saying no. The following Sunday, Martha texted the group chat. "Dinner at my place, 5 o'clock, who is coming?" David immediately replied that he would be there. I waited a few minutes, then texted back, "I cannot make it, work deadline." "Sorry." That was it. No long explanation, no guilt, just a simple no. David looked at me across the kitchen. "You are not coming to Sunday dinner." I shook my head. "I really do have a deadline. You should go, though." He seemed confused, but he did not push it. And honestly, I do not think he cared that much. He went to dinner. I stayed home. And for the first time in 5 years, I had a Sunday evening to myself. I made pasta. I watched a movie I had been wanting to see. I did not check my phone. And when David came home later that night full of stories about what Brandon said and how Martha's pot roast was dry this time, I just nodded. "Nobody asked about you," he said casually, like it was no big deal. I smiled. Of course they did not. The first week was strange. I kept expecting my phone to buzz, kept expecting someone to text and say, "We missed you," or "Is everything okay?" But nothing came. The group chat kept going. Plans were made. Jokes were shared. Photos were posted. And I was not part of any of it. It stung at first, I will not lie. But it also felt like proof. Jessica was right. I could disappear and nobody would notice. By the second week, something shifted inside me. Instead of feeling sad, I started to feel lighter. Free. I had so much time suddenly. Time I used to spend planning around their schedules, shopping for their gifts, showing up to events where I did not feel wanted. Now, I had that time back. I started going for walks in the morning, something I had not done in years. I joined an online design community and started connecting with other creatives. I took on an extra freelance project, something I never had the bandwidth for before. I also started taking care of myself in ways I had neglected. I went to the salon and got highlights, warm copper tones that made me feel like a different person. I bought new clothes, things I actually liked instead of safe choices that would not draw attention. I started a yoga routine. Small things, but they added up. I started to feel like myself again. Or maybe for the first time, I was actually becoming myself. David noticed the changes, but did not comment much. "You seem different," he said one night. "I am just busy with work," I replied. And that was enough for him. He kept going to family dinners without me. Every week like clockwork. And every week he would come home and tell me what happened, and every week he would casually mention that nobody asked where I was. It stopped hurting after a while. It just became a fact. 3 months in, something finally cracked on their end. It was Martha's birthday. Normally, I would have organized everything. A gift, a card, maybe even a small surprise party. This year, I did nothing. I did not send a text. I did not acknowledge it at all. The day came and went. 2 days later, Martha sent a message in the group chat. "Thank you all for the birthday wishes. It felt a little quiet this year, but I appreciate you all." I saw the message. I did not respond. A week after that, it was Emma's birthday, Jessica's daughter. In the past, I always sent a gift, a toy, a book, something thoughtful. This time, nothing. The morning of Emma's birthday, my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. "Hey, Nat, did you forget Emma's birthday?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Sorry, been swamped with work. I did not offer to send something late. I did not apologize more than once. I just left it at that." Jessica did not respond. I could feel the shift happening. They were starting to notice the gaps. The things that used to get done were not getting done anymore. But nobody said anything directly. Not yet. By the 6th month, the cracks in their world were becoming visible. Brandon's company was going through layoffs, and he was stressed out of his mind. Jessica had to travel for work, a 2-week trip she could not get out of. They needed someone to watch Emma. In the past, they always asked me. I worked from home, so in their minds, I was available. Sure enough, my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Hey Nat, I know this is last minute, but Brandon and I are in a bind. Can you watch Emma for a couple weeks?" I could hear the expectation in her voice, the assumption that I would say yes. I took a breath. "I cannot. I have client deadlines." There was a pause. "Can you maybe move them? This is really important." I kept my voice calm. "I really cannot. I am sorry." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay." She sounded stunned, like she could not believe I was saying no. "We will figure something out." She hung up. Later, David told me that Martha had to take time off work to watch Emma. That it caused a huge strain because Martha could not afford to lose that income. That Jessica and Brandon were fighting about it. I felt a flicker of guilt, but I pushed it down. This was not my responsibility. It never should have been. They had taken my help for granted for years. Now they were learning what it was like without it. By the 9th month, everything came to a head. Thanksgiving was approaching again. Exactly 1 year since Jessica's comment. Martha sent a message to the group chat. "Thanksgiving at my place again, cannot wait to see everyone. Let me know what you are bringing." I saw David typing immediately. "We will be there." But I did not respond, and I did not plan to go. David confronted me a week before Thanksgiving. "You are coming to Thanksgiving, right?" I shook my head. "I am going to Colorado with some friends." "Friends? Since when?" "Since I had time to reconnect with them," I said simply. David looked lost. "But it is Thanksgiving. It is family." "You should go be with your family. I will be fine." He did not understand. And honestly, I did not expect him to. But I was not going to spend another Thanksgiving being ignored at a table full of people who did not see me. Instead, I went to Colorado with 2 college friends I had lost touch with over the years. We rented a cabin, drank hot chocolate, hiked through the snow, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. I posted a few photos on my private social media. Nothing public, nothing tagged. Just proof to myself that I was living, that I was happy, that I did not need them. Meanwhile, back in Kansas, their Thanksgiving was falling apart. David called me that night. The turkey burned. There was no dessert. The house was a mess because nobody helped Mom clean beforehand. Brandon is stressed, Jessica is exhausted, and honestly, it was kind of depressing. There was a long pause. Mom said she did not realize how much you used to do. I did not say anything. "What was there to say? I told you." David continued that you were the glue holding things together. I just did not realize how true that was until now. I should have felt vindicated. But mostly, I just felt tired. December came fast. Martha got sick with a bad case of the flu and could not host Christmas. Jessica was overwhelmed with work and taking care of Emma. Brandon was working overtime to keep his job. And David, bless him, had no idea how to organize a family holiday. He called me, panic in his voice. "Babe, Mom is sick. Nobody else can pull Christmas together. Can you help?" I could hear the desperation. The assumption that I would swoop in and save the day like I always had. But I did not want to save the day anymore. I already made plans with friends. "I am sorry. But it is Christmas. It is family. You should go be with your family. I will be fine." It was the same thing I said about Thanksgiving, and it landed just as heavily. David did not know what to say. He hung up frustrated, and I went back to planning my trip to visit my college roommate in Oregon. Christmas Eve. My phone rang. It was Jessica. I almost did not pick up, but something told me I should. "Hello, Natalie." Her voice cracked immediately. I need to talk to you. Okay. She started crying. I did not expect that. Everything is falling apart, Nat. Brandon and I are barely speaking. Emma has been acting out at school. Work is crushing me. I do not know what to do anymore. I listened. I did not interrupt. I just let her talk. And the thing is, Jessica continued. I feel like everything started going wrong after last Thanksgiving. I do not know why. It is like the whole family is falling apart, and I cannot figure out what changed. I almost laughed. Not meanly, just at the absurdity of it. She really did not see it. What changed, Jessica, is that I stopped doing everything. There was silence on the other end. What do you mean? I mean, for 5 years I was the one who remembered birthdays. I bought the gifts. I organized the holidays. I helped with Emma. I cleaned up after dinners. I made sure everyone felt taken care of. And none of you noticed. So I stopped. And now you are noticing. That was just a joke, she whispered. Was it? I asked. Because it did not feel like a joke. It felt like the truth. And honestly, you were right. I did disappear. And for months, nobody noticed. Not until things started falling apart. Jessica was crying harder now. I am so sorry, Natalie. I did not mean it. I was jealous, okay? You always seemed so calm and put together, and I felt like a mess all the time. I wanted to knock you down a little. I did not think it would hurt you that much. I took a breath. I accept your apology, Jessica. But that does not mean things are going back to how they were. What do you mean? I spent 5 years making myself small, so all of you could feel big. I am done doing that. But we need you. No, I said firmly. You got used to me doing things for you. That is not the same as needing me. You will figure it out. You are all capable adults. There was a long silence. Then Jessica said quietly, I really am sorry. I know, I said. And I meant it. But sorry was not enough to undo 5 years of being invisible. Christmas Day. David convinced me to at least stop by for dinner. I agreed mostly out of curiosity. I wanted to see it for myself. When I walked into Martha's house, the difference was stark. There were no decorations, no tree, no lights. The dining table had pizza boxes on it, store-bought. Nobody had cooked. Martha looked exhausted. Brandon and Jessica looked tense. Emma was whining in the corner. We all sat down to eat in uncomfortable silence. Martha tried to make conversation. We have missed you, dear. I smiled politely. Have you? It came out sharper than I intended, but I did not take it back. Brandon finally spoke up. Look, Nat, I know we have not been the best family to you, but things have been falling apart without you here. I looked at him. Funny how you only notice someone when they are gone. Jessica stood up suddenly. Can I talk to you outside? I followed her to the front porch. It was cold, and I wrapped my arms around myself. Jessica looked at me with red eyes. I really messed up. I know I hurt you, and I know saying sorry is not enough, but I want you to know that I see you now. I see how much you did, how much you gave, and I took it for granted. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that, Jessica, but seeing me now does not erase 5 years of not seeing me. I know. Her voice broke. I just do not want to lose you. You are not losing me, I said. But you are also not getting the old me back. I am not going to shrink myself anymore. Not for you. Not for anyone. We stood there in the cold for another minute, then went back inside. The rest of the evening was awkward but civil. When we left, David held my hand in the car. I should have stood up for you, he said quietly. I should have seen it. I should have been a better husband. I stared out the window. Yeah, you should have. I love you, Nat. But I realized something this year. I cannot be in a marriage where I am invisible, and you let me be invisible. He started crying. I did not know he could cry like that. What do you want me to do? I will change. I do not know if you can, I said honestly. And I do not know if I want to try anymore. His face crumpled. Are you leaving me? I do not know, David. I just need time. We started marriage counseling in January. David showed up to every session. He actually tried. He started standing up for me when his family made comments. He set boundaries. He made time for just the two of us. It was more effort than he had put in during our entire marriage. But I still kept my distance from his family. I did not go to every dinner. I did not volunteer to help with everything. I only showed up when I wanted to, and I left when I was ready. And slowly, painfully, they started to treat me differently. With respect. With gratitude. Like I was a person, not a convenience. It has been a little over a year now since that Thanksgiving. Since Jessica said those words that changed everything. I am still with David. We are working on things. It is not perfect, but it is better. He finally understands that love is not just a feeling. It is action. It is standing up for someone. It is seeing them when everyone else refuses to. My relationship with his family is different now too. We are polite. We are civil. But I am not their go-to person anymore. I do not organize their lives. I do not fix their problems. And honestly, they have learned to handle things themselves. Martha plans her own birthdays now. Jessica hires babysitters. Brandon manages his own stress. They are fine. They were always going to be fine. They just needed to stop relying on me to do everything. The biggest change, though, is in me. I have friends now. Real friends who see me and value me. I have hobbies. I have a career that is thriving. I make more money now than I ever did before, because I have the time and energy to invest in myself. I take up space. I speak up. I do not apologize for existing anymore. And when someone tries to make me feel small, I walk away. Because I learned something important this year. You teach people how to treat you. For 5 years, I taught David's family that they could take me for granted, that they could ignore me, dismiss me, use me, and I would keep showing up with a smile. When I disappeared, they did not fall apart because I was gone. They fell apart because they finally had to face the truth, that they had been taking advantage of someone who loved them, and when that person stopped giving, they had nothing left to stand on. Jessica was wrong, by the way. She said if I disappeared, nobody would notice, but they did notice. It just took them a lot longer than it should have. And by the time they figured it out, I had already learned how to live without them. I did not need their validation anymore. I did not need them to see me, because I finally saw myself. If you have ever felt invisible, I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. They just are not looking, and that is not your fault. You do not owe anyone your presence, especially people who do not appreciate it. Sometimes, the loudest statement you can make is silence. Sometimes, walking away is not giving up. It is waking up. I do not regret disappearing. It was the best decision I ever made, because it taught me that I was never the problem. I was never too quiet, too sensitive, too much, or too little. I was just surrounded by people who did not deserve me. And once I removed myself from that equation, everything became clear. They did not fall apart because I left. They fell apart because they never built anything that did not depend on me holding it together. And that was never my job to begin with. So if someone ever jokes that you would not be missed, maybe it is time to prove them right. Not to hurt them, but to free yourself. Because you deserve to be around people who notice when you are gone, who miss you when you are not there, who see you even when you are quiet. And if the people in your life cannot do that, then maybe it is time to find new people. Or better yet, maybe it is time to learn how to be enough for yourself. Because you are. You always were. They just convinced you otherwise. I am still figuring out what comes next. I do not know if my marriage will survive. I do not know if I will ever fully forgive David's family. But I do know this. I am never going back to being invisible. I am never going to shrink myself again. And I am never going to wait for someone else to notice me, because I notice me now, and that is enough. So let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever been the person who does everything and gets nothing in return? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I want to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because I share real stories about real people navigating the mess of family and relationships. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who has been making themselves small for too long. Maybe this will be the push they need to finally take up space. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for seeing me. I hope wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you remember that you are worth noticing. You are worth celebrating. And if the people around you cannot see that, then maybe it is time to find people who can. Or maybe it is time to be alone for a while and learn to see yourself. Either way, you are going to be okay. I promise. Take care of yourself.